County 911, the case of emergency.
My father has come up missing. We just searched the property. It's a small farm, and I just found something near the farm that doesn't. I was deployed to Iraq. I've seen what burned up bodies look like, and this looks like a body.
When my father has come up missing, we just searched the property of a small farm, and I just found something near a fire that doesn't. I was deployed to Iraq. I've seen what burned up bodies look like, and this looks like a body. And is the actual 911 call. That is Scott Ferris on July 5, 2010 of a smoldering burn pile on a 10-acre farm in Alpharetta, Georgia, realizing that the unrecognizable remains in front of him belonged to his own father. Imagine a family photograph, the kind you'd see in a Southern Living magazine spread, manicured pastures, a 2-story home, grandchildren feeding goats. And then imagine someone holding a lit match to the corner of that photograph and letting the flame consume everything in the frame. That image, the elegant facade turning to ash, is this entire case. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Beyond the Gavel file. Because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. That 911 call set in motion an investigation that would take over 6 years to reach a courtroom. What investigators found inside the home was a crime scene written in blood. A trail led from the kitchen down the stairs into the basement. A spent bullet projectile lay on the floor near an ottoman.
A crime scene is usually never just one location. In this case, it's not just the burn pile, it's the entire Ferris property that detectives need to look at.
They knew that there was a house nearby. They decided to expand that search. They go to the home, and what they found in that home was very telling.
Inside the house, they find a blood trail from the kitchen area that goes down the steps into the basement area, and they find not only a blood trail, they also find an actual bullet projectile on the floor by the ottoman.
Testing later revealed that the blood, the DNA on this projectile, was the DNA of Gary Ferris.
We know that there was one bullet in his body, and then we know that there was one through and through with his DNA on it.
DNA testing confirmed the blood belonged to Gary Ferris. He had been shot at least twice. Then his body, all 300 pounds of a 6'4" man, had been dragged outside, loaded onto some implement, transported across the property, and set ablaze on a burn pile so intensely that less than 50 pounds of skeletal remains were ultimately recovered.
He looked at me and he said, "You need to get the kids the F out of here. I'm calling 911.
County 911, the case of emergency.
My father has come up missing. We just searched the property. It's a small farm, and I just found something near the farm that doesn't. He was burning brush, and now there's stuff in the fire that it could be him. I don't know.
Okay, what is your name?
Scott Ferris.
You said your father?
Yes, sir. Now I'm calling you to say that we've been walking around looking for him, and I went where the fire is still smoldering, and I'm ex-military. I was deployed to Iraq. I've seen what burned up bodies look like, and this looks like a body.
When they got the call, they believed that someone may have had a health episode and fallen into a fire.
He was in the hospital for 3 days. But he's had these spells for years, and he talks. He gets very slurred speech. His motor coordination gets very off. He stumbles.
I walked back down to that burn pile, and that's when I saw which was the most awful image a person could see, which was your own father's skull in a burn pile.
Dental records show that the body that was found in the fire was indeed the body of Gary Ferris.
When they saw the state of Gary's remains, they knew at that point these remains have been on this fire for a significantly long time.
Gary Ferris was a very large man. You know, he was well over 6 feet tall, probably around 300 pounds. At the end of the day, we're talking about probably less than 50 pounds that was recovered or something like that, but there was mainly some skeletal bones remains. An anthropologist comes out and she starts helping process the scene.
There was a set of ribs, about 2 or 3 ribs pulled out of the fire, and there ended up being a full bullet, not even a fragment, a full bullet, lodged between 2 ribs into the tissue.
They were able to determine that the death was caused by a gunshot wound to the thoracic, the chest region, with the bullet being lodged in the rib. And they were able to determine that the manner of death was homicide. That changed everything on the scene that day. They knew it was definitely not an accident.
The question that would haunt every stage of this investigation was not what happened. It was who could have possibly done it. The wife who stood to inherit everything. Or the son she immediately tried to blame. The narrative of the Ferris family was a masterclass in curated perfection. Gary Ferris was a successful commercial real estate attorney, a partner at his firm, a man so respected that the American Diabetes Association once honored him as a Father of the Year. Melody Ferris was the high school sweetheart turned wife of 38 years, the matriarch who had raised 4 children. But behind that flawless exterior, the marriage was a corpse that hadn't been discovered yet.
It was a family that didn't talk about our problems, didn't talk about our issues. It was always great on the outside with turmoil on the inside.
Finances were a large issue in this marriage. Melody's exuberant and exorbitant spending. Gary was a successful lawyer, making a nice paycheck, and it seems that the family was spending that paycheck.
Gary would not allow Melody to have a credit card. He would not have her names on the accounts. Gary did send a message regarding Melody, Scott, and Chris, and all of them spending Gary's money, specifically Melody's. He mentioned to her, "Your profligate spending must stop."
But as detectives continue to investigate, they realize that these money problems are just the tip of the iceberg. There is something else that is causing tension within the family.
My mom decided to step out of the marriage and had an affair with a gentleman named Ted Wiley. That caused a lot of friction in the family, not just between my parents, but between us and my mother. She came back to my dad after he had filed for divorce.
Ultimately, it was a relationship of acceptance that they were going to live 2 separate lives. They were almost like 2 ships passing in the night.
She lived on the first floor where the main kitchen was. The second floor was kind of guest bedrooms where the grandchildren would stay and family would stay. And then the bottom floor, which...
The finances were a wreck. Gary had cut off Melody's access to credit cards entirely. He sent her a written message stating, and I quote, "Your profligate spending must stop." But money was only the visible crack in the foundation. Melody had stepped out of the marriage with a man named Ted Y. The affair caused a schism not just between husband and wife, but between mother and children. She returned after Gary filed for divorce, but by then, the arrangement had curdled into something colder. They lived on separate floors of the same house, 2 ships passing in the night. Gary slept in the basement with a CPAP machine. Melody lived upstairs, and she had a new secret romantic partner no one knew about. His name was Rusty Barton.
But here's where the investigation takes a dramatic turn. Melody Ferris, the grieving widow, had a lover, a secret romantic partner. This guy's name? Rusty Barton.
In her purse, she had a debit card, a financial transaction card, a credit card of some sort for Roy Barton. Eventually, law enforcement learned that Roy Barton is actually Rusty Barton.
Melody began her relationship with Rusty unbeknownst to a lot of people, to almost everyone. And that relationship continued until Gary was killed.
That caused a lot of issues, as it should. My mother hated my dad, and my dad was trying everything he could do to keep her from having these affairs.
They had been looking at houses. There was a lot of planning going on between the two of them. And I don't think it was just idealistic. I think it was practical planning. And Gary not being in the picture was part of that plan. So I think she wanted that to come to fruition, and she was done waiting for it to, and just made it happen herself.
Initially, Melody Ferris told police that affair ended about a year or so before the murder of Gary Ferris. However, she said she still cared about him, and they talked on occasion.
Melody and Rusty had a number of calls the night of July 3rd, which is the night that Gary died. And one of those calls was at 2 o'clock in the morning. They had never spoken that late.
This is the point where the prosecution's case narrows to a single, devastating piece of evidence. Gary Ferris used that CPAP machine every night. The data from the device showed a precise, unbroken pattern of behavior. He would go to sleep 11:30 p.m. and 100 a.m., and the machine would run for hours until he woke. That data stopped completely on the morning of July 3, 2018. It was never turned on again. He was murdered that night. Now here's the GPS evidence. The morning of July around 6:15 a.m., Gary Ferris's phone moved from the house out to the location of the burn pile. Gary was already dead. Melody Ferris was the only person on the property. Scott Ferris's phone placed him miles away with friends. The data was unambiguous. The dead man's phone moved, and Melody was the only one holding it.
We collected the data from his CPAP machine. We ended up getting this data and being able to show a pattern of behavior for when Gary would go to sleep every night. And he would go to sleep between 11:30 and 1 a.m. It would always turn on at some point for however many hours that he would be sleeping. The data just stopped the morning of the 3rd, so it never was turned on that evening or any other evening thereafter. So based on the CPAP machine, we were able to determine he was murdered the night of the 3rd. The GPS location of Gary's phone was significant because the morning of the 4th, around 6:15, 6:17, Gary's phone moves from the house out to the burn pile. We know Melody's the only one home, and so Melody must have Gary's phone. That was a significant piece of evidence that proved when she was by herself, she must have had Gary's phone because we know Gary was dead.
What's relevant about that is data also showed Scott Ferris's phone was away. Scott Ferris said he was with friends somewhere else. The data supported that.
She did not call 911. She did not report him missing. Her sons were the ones who found the body a full day later. So here is the ticking clock question you must ask yourself. How long does it take for a 130-pound man from a basement to a burn pile? And what was she doing during every single minute between that first gunshot and the moment her son came home to find a fire already burning?
They would go in the house and make shots in different areas and record them throughout the house.
The results of that testing led police detectives to believe that Melody Ferris was not being truthful when she said she did not hear anything. They believed someone in that house would have heard gunshots when those gunshots occurred.
Here's the thing, you were at home.
Right.
You were the only person that was at home.
Right.
With your husband.
Right.
There is evidence we have found in the house that indicates that you would have heard something. There is almost no way in the world that you wouldn't have.
I would never hurt Gary.
I didn't ask that. We found blood. Do you know anything about the blood?
No, I did not know anything about the blood. Nothing.
Something happened to him. How did he die? You were told how he died, weren't you?
Well, we just assumed when Scott said, this is human remains on this fire.
Have you been told how he died, what we found?
He told me that there was a shot or a slug in the rib.
So what does that indicate to you?
A gunshot wound.
But the problem is there's almost no way in this world that you didn't see something, hear something, or know something, and someone is shot, moved, and burned 30 feet from your bedroom window.
I know nothing.
But the night of the 3rd, the only person there until 11:30.
Was me?
Yes. And then after that, you were still there. His body was burned in that fire pit. What if I told you we found evidence of the shooting in the basement? Not saying he was shot there, just simply saying evidence that suggests that he was shot was found in the basement.
In my basement?
Mm-hmm.
I would be very surprised.
We'll be surprised.
Inside my house?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely, 100%.
There's blood on both levels. There's blood in your kitchen.
In my kitchen?
Absolutely.
I would have never taken my children's dad away. I had my daddy to die when I was 36. I wouldn't wish that on my family.
Scott Ferris became the defense's designated alternative suspect, and the accusation was not subtle. Melody told law enforcement directly, quote, "Look at Scott." She painted him as a freeloading, hot-tempered veteran living above the barn, financially dependent on his father. She alleged he resented Gary and believed the property was already his. But when investigators put Scott under pressure, his response was to demand a polygraph. He passed it. No deception indicated on the questions of accused in causing Gary's death or whether he shot Gary himself. The district attorney's office followed the evidence and cleared him. And then a second piece of digital evidence surfaced. Gary Ferris's own cell phone contained audio filmed on July 2nd, the day before the murder. In the video, Gary pans across shattered plate fragments on the ground and says, "This is what happens when you leave a plate, forget to take it upstairs. A minor temper tantrum. Wish I had separate tonight, and it was fixed for me. So I'm sure I'll be feeling poorly here within minutes, but we'll see." Gary Ferris believed his wife was poisoning him. The plate, the temper tantrum, the separate dinner, the sudden illness. He documented his own slow destruction, and he never got to record another second.
But, like, I'm to the point now where I want to know what happened to my father.
Within this past year, the fighting between the two of them just got, worse and worse. And the comments my dad never said anything negative to me about my mother, except for just like her going out and spending so much money on stuff. But my mother, on the other hand, man, I can't tell you how many times I've heard her say, I can't wait till the day I don't have to live with him. I wish he'll just have a heart attack and die.
He knew a lot of information about Melody and Gary's relationship. He had a front row seat to the demise of their marriage. Scott had stated to law enforcement that his mom got so angry at Gary very recently before the murder that they were outside and she brought out a plate that Gary had forgot to bring to the kitchen and slammed that plate down and screamed something to the effect of, I can't wait till he's gone, I can't wait till he's dead. We found a video from July 2nd, which was the day before the murder, where he filmed the remnants of that broken plate.
This is what happens when you leave a plate, forget to take it upstairs, a minor temper tantrum. Which I had supper tonight and it was fixed for me, so I'm sure I'll be feeling poorly here within minutes, but we'll see.
The secret lover, Rusty Barton, became the pivot point the prosecution needed. Police confronted him with a direct threat of conspiracy charges, and the cooperation that followed produced the most damning statement in the entire case. Rusty Barton told investigators that during a late call with Melody, in the window of time when Gary Ferris was dead but no one had yet found his body, Melody said the words, "He is in the burn pile." She knew before anyone else. She knew before her sons discovered the remains. She knew because she put him there.
So they dial in and they threaten to file charges of conspiracy against Rusty Barton if he did not cooperate in the police investigation. Conspiracy is an act that can be both before the crime or after the crime. So it's a fair accusation that police threw at Rusty Barton to gain his cooperation. That conversation ended up paying off.
I think there was only one conversation that is what you're looking for. Probably the last minute of the last conversation, she said, Gary is in the burn pile. No, she said, he is in the burn pile. And I said, what? And she said, he's in the burn pile. And I said, do not say another word and do not tell me anything. I do not need to know. And that is everything.
When she said he is in the burn pile, what was your assumption?
That she had something to do with him.
Yeah.
That he was dead and burning
because I don't, yeah, that he was dead and burning up.
That statement was made around the time his remains were found. So obviously, if it was made the night of the 3rd, going into the 4th, that is extremely incriminating considering his remains had not been found until July 5th. It shows her knowledge that he was actually dead.
Rusty Barton went further. He agreed to wear a wire and record conversations with Melody. In those recordings, she vacillates between panic and deflection. When asked if she got rid of a gun, she says there was no gun. When reminded that she told Rusty her husband was in the burn pile, she shifts blame again. She whispers that Scott must have burned the body. And then she says, "You don't say anything. You say nothing." That refrain, "You say nothing," is the spine of her defense. She said nothing to police. She said nothing to her children. She hired an attorney and went silent while her sons searched desperately for answers. The performance of grief never materialized. Her own son, Scott, told detectives something that became the emotional center of this case. He said, "My personal opinion, I saw her more upset over when her dog died."
All her sons and have known her for 30-something years. What about a person in her situation that you think she should act and how she actually acted? Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yes.
So come from both of those angles and tell me what you guys feel.
I mean, from Thursday on, my personal opinion, I saw her more upset over when her dog died. Her behavior is just hasn't seemed right for a grieving widow.
Detectives keep coming back to this one unavoidable reality. Gary Ferris was a big man. He was close to 300 pounds. Melody Ferris, 130 pounds. There is no world in which she could just move his body by herself. So this is what leads police to theorize maybe she had assistance in moving his body.
Police started having to take a look at various theories on how the body went from the basement to this burn pile. One of these implements is a tractor. The son Scott was walking police detectives around the property, and he made note of one thing that was very different. There was a tractor that is usually parked inside of a shed, but the tractor had been moved and parked outside of that shed. And Scott told police that was unusual. That tractor was never parked in the spot.
How well does your mother operate that tractor?
She asked me to teach her how to use it back in early spring.
And she would have been able to do it.
I mean, honestly, that tractor was so easy to operate, I could teach my 13-year-old niece.
That single line is not evidence in a legal sense, but it is the difference between a grieving widow and a woman who had already processed her husband's death before his body was cold. At trial, the prosecution put forward a clean, devastating theory. Melody Ferris wanted her husband's money and she wanted a life with Rusty Barton. Divorce would have meant splitting the estate. Murder meant inheriting everything. The motive was not mysterious, it was math. The physical possibility of Melody moving the body alone was the defense's strongest argument. They pointed to Scott's size, his military background, his access to firearms, the missing, the .38 snub-nose revolver that matched the ballistic evidence. They argued the state had tunnel vision from day one. But then came the twist that does not happen very often. A phone call arrived mid-trial from a woman named Martha Jean Barton, Rusty Barton's stepmother and Melody's second cousin. She told investigators that she owned a .38 special snub-nose revolver, and that Melody Ferris was the only person she had ever told where that gun was hidden in her home. After Melody's arrest, Martha Jean searched her house. The .357 Magnum was still there. The .38 special was gone. That testimony placed a firearm matching the murder weapon directly in Melody Ferris's knowledge and access. The missing gun, the one investigators never found, now had a documented origin and a documented disappearance, and both pointed to the defendant.
I received an email actually from the captain of CID with an attachment. There was no body in the email, just an attachment, and it was an MP3, and it was titled Martha Barton.
This case had one of those twists that doesn't happen very often. Martha Jean was the second cousin of Melody Ferris. Melody would drive up and help Martha Jane. Interesting enough, Martha Jane was also a stepmother to Rusty Barton.
This is Martha Barton in Tullahoma, Tennessee.
How are you, ma'am?
Well, I've got a heavy heart.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm sure you're very aware of the case of Melody Ferris that's going on right now.
I am.
My husband gave me a .38 snub-nose special. I even bought him a .357 Magnum for Christmas one year. I was very weak one day when she was here, and I told her where several things were that I shouldn't have, but she had a way of, well, she was family. And I told her where those two guns were. Well, after she was arrested, the .357 Magnum was there. My .38 special was gone. I have also searched this house over to see. I mean, I'm not senile. I'm in very poor health, but that gun is gone.
I've had stuff in my trials where you go, oh, that's kind of like a Perry Mason or whatever you want to call it. Martha Jane's introduction to the trial was shocking for everybody. I think the jury had a big impact by that. Outside of the defendant, did you tell anybody else where your pistol was?
No.
Did anybody know you were calling law enforcement?
No, they didn't.
Did you feel like you just had to tell the jury about it?
I felt like it was the right thing to do.
When Martha Jane Barton came forward, that puts a gun in her hand that we didn't have before that we needed the jury to hear about.
The verdict came back on all 5 counts: malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, concealing the death of another, and making a false statement. Guilty on every single one.
Following nearly 14 hours of deliberation, the jury comes back with a verdict on all 5 counts. But here's how they do it. They actually go in reverse. They start with count 5, making a false statement.
We, the jury, as to count 5, we find the defendant guilty.
Then count 4, concealing the death of another.
We, the jury, as to count 4, find the defendant guilty.
Count 3, aggravated assault.
We, the jury, as to count 3, we find the defendant guilty.
And then the final 2 counts of malice and felony murder.
We, the jury, as to count 2, find the defendant guilty. And we, the jury, as to count one, find the defendant guilty.
We're going to get some good news today and finally get some, justice for my dad. And we did. And once you hear that guilty, it's like everybody now knows what I know, and it confirmed everything.
Before the sentence is handed down, the Ferris children submit this statement that's read aloud by Prosecutor Frankish.
Your Honor, since our father was taken from us, our lives have been filled with an unbearable void. Every day feels like a constant reminder of what we have lost. Gary was a father, grandfather, brother, uncle, friend, and colleague to many. We miss his laughter, his warmth, and his presence in our lives. It's a pain that will never go away. This loss is only made worse by the betrayal of trust we feel for our mother. To know that the person who caused the suffering to our family was someone we relied on the most is a wound that may never heal.
Melody Ferris stood before the court at sentencing and did something that defied logic. She looked at the judge and said, "I know Scott killed his father." After a trial, after the evidence, after the guilty verdicts, she was still trying to sell the same story she had told from the beginning. Her own children submitted a victim impact statement that read, "This loss is only made worse by the betrayal of trust we feel for our mother." The judge sentenced her to life with the possibility of parole after 30 years. What remains is the documentation, the full trial record, including the CPAP machine data, the GPS coordinates of Gary Ferris's phone, and the polygraph examination report of Scott Ferris, are all available through the public court filings in Cherokee County, Georgia, case number 20N734. Go read the phone location exhibits. Ask yourself one question in the comments below. If Melody Ferris was innocent, why was she the only person on the property when her dead husband's phone traveled from the basement to the burn pile? If you want more documentaries that follow the evidence instead of the headlines, like this video, share it with someone who only knows the surface story, subscribe to Beyond the Gavel File, and turn on notifications. We don't stop at the verdict. We go where the documents lead.